game's taken just 12 months, just over 12 months to develop. We started at the end of January 2003, so it's been an absolutely crazy year. I wanted to make something which would take Transformers somewhere new. You know, you look at the toys, those are great for kids. You look at the cartoon, that's for a certain kind of demographic as well. The question with Transformers was how to take it and make it into something that would work as a PS2 game. The potential of it and the brilliance of it is astounding, really. Everybody at Melbourne House worked on this title, so 70 odd people internally, 10 different divisions. The game was split into several core areas: art, technology and design. It's gameplay first, and the story comes second. However, the story is sort of woven into the gameplay, and it loosely follows the plot of the Transformers Armada TV show. The minicons crash on Earth a million years ago, and you need to recover them. The Autobots need to recover them in order to turn the tide in the great war that's been going on for a million years between the Decepticons and the Autobots. The gameplay is really organic. There's not just one way to play through a level or one thing to do in a level. It's not a traditional game in that sense.
I think freedom is very important for modern game players. They don't want to feel like they're just running down a tunnel lined with trees. So it's something we place great value in. Our levels are particularly vast and scenic, and there's actually lots of things to explore and lots of enemies to fight, lots of things to collect in the levels. The player's always free to explore to the side, and in fact we encourage them to, because there's lots of additional minicons and datacons that they're going to find by that. Minicons are smaller robots, and they're basically smart tools. So when we were thinking about how to integrate them, we thought, well, they obviously can be used as upgrades and weapons. We invented a concept called a datacon, which is similar to a minicon. It's an information archive which is scattered across the planet. So as a player, you actually find these in the game world. So it gives you more to explore for. Once you discover these archives, you can then go to the extras menu, and you'll find tons of our production art, special renders available nowhere else of the characters. So there's a lot of stuff there that game players will enjoy seeing the game production side, but Transformers fans will go mad.
We have 3 art directors, one focused on the backgrounds, one focused on the characters, and one focused on the CG, which is Kuji Kawase. He's previously worked on Final Fantasy games, and he's been working on directing the CG with our friends at Build Up in Japan.
My aim for FMV is just Final Fantasy quality, like a commercial. I worked at Square. I used to do the Final Fantasy FMV. Build Up can't understand English well. So I made very detailed feedback for storyboards and animatics in Japanese.
Working with Build Up in Japan is something that I've really wanted to do for quite a while. Most of the models that are in the CG are originally made by Melbourne House staff. So we have Western produced game models which are going to a Japanese studio and being enhanced with a really special Japanese touch back to us, where we incorporate them into the game.
I would have waited an eternity for this.
In the early stages of the project, we needed assets, especially for our art team, who were producing the characters for the game. They sent us the actual toys that we could look at, and we concluded that we needed to make the whole game a lot more edgier, a lot more adult, a lot more appealing to sort of 20 to 30-year-old PlayStation 2 players. So we needed to take the brand to a new place, to somewhere that it hasn't been before, which is a cooler, sort of edgier, much more exciting form of Transformers.
This is the light unit, so he's a very important character to the game. Originally the guy was called Chameleon, and we come up with a pencil sketch, and this is the very, very first production drawing. Our artists then go back and make many designs, and this is the winner we come up with. And once we say this is good, we make something a little clearer. Now you can see like lots of details. You can see his little swimming pants, and you can see the kind of gun he's holding. Once we go to the computer stage, it's interesting to note that we build him, we texture in, only then we define the colors. He's really small. We thought he'd be cute in pink. Once we have the model built, everybody has a look at them, and this guy, his butt was a little bit too big and his gun was too small, so you can see the pants, they almost turned into like a G-string here. You can't give something character which can't talk. because they don't have emotions in their faces, they can laugh or cry. But it's very important to us to show emotion, and also really the threat a certain unit poses to you. That unit doesn't really run anyway, he doesn't really go too fast, he's not really too smart, so it should be an easy target. The problem is, once you encounter them in large numbers, trouble.
The transform feature is something that was really quite difficult to make work as well as it does. To begin with, we made the robot just like the toys, but we really wanted to make both the vehicle and the robot look better than they do as toys, make cooler designs. And the problem is that as soon as you make, the vehicle look cool, then it means that the robot looks wrong. Or if you make the robot look really good, then that's not right for a vehicle. So we needed to find a way to separate the vehicle and the robot into two completely different models and have them blend together and transform in a way which is invisible to the eye, really.
We were really interested to build something a little more organic, and so we tried to sort of introduce a lot of natural landscapes, and those natural landscapes I think have allowed the game to be a lot more open.
If you look at the Amazon, I don't think that any game actually has an environment that's quite like this, and it's because we have a very special kind of technology that let us do that.
And this was our dream of what the forest was going to look like. So this is not using the game system, this is hand modelled and hand lit. It becomes like almost a Bible for what we want that style to be. You start with a rough top-down map, that becomes a very detailed top-down map, that becomes a height map, that becomes a mesh that's been projected onto the height map and then elevated. If you're just sort of building it out of polygons, it's really contrived. So we're starting with organic, and then we're putting gameplay into that organic with the intention that it's a realistic place, and so you feel like you really are in there. You're not in a series of boxes and slides that is basically a puzzle. You're trying to build somewhere real. We did base them on real places. We didn't actually take absolute geography of places. We took themes and concepts, and so we have levels in the Amazon rainforest. We have an Antarctic level. The idea with that really is not so much the excitement of ice and snow, but the idea that we can have a lot of visual effect. There's masses of snow, there's wind, there's spin drift going across the surface of the snow. Deep Amazon is just an extension of the Amazon, where we try and use lighting as a very dramatic sort of way, and we're really trying to get a lot of atmosphere into the level. There's a lot of things that come from the technical group that just basically help the artists not only do the job as to the highest possible level, but to do it easier and faster. We developed a system for generating primary objects which we then can perpetuate through the world. We use it for trees, and we basically build maybe 9 or 10 trees, and then we just paint those across the level using a template system. You can just turn on a channel here and paint in the location of where we want the trees to be. So the red areas are where the trees are thick, and the white areas are where the trees are thin. We have a lot of water in the game, and we just talk about what we'd like the water to be. The technical guys write the algorithms, and then we just set up, wave parameters and colours for that water. And so for an artist, it's a lot of fun just basically asking for what you want.
Computers are better at just drawing flat, polygons and things like that. So we came up with this ocean shader, and that consumes quite a fair amount of the power of the PS2 to do that. So we gave it like about 10%. It can give the worlds a richness that isn't common really in games up to now. Wherever you go in this large world, it's still very detailed. As you're navigating across, you see a hill from the distance, and you wander there, and then you climb it, and then you get to the top, and there's still a lot of detail just like in that one small area. So in some areas in Transformers we have more complexity than we've almost had in some of our entire levels in earlier games.
One example of collaborative development is the Cybertron level, which is the final level of the game. They wanted to have a world that you could fly around, like completely different to any of the other levels. And we built a technology that enabled to have a whole lot of buildings in the level. And we said, well, can you land on these buildings? And they thought, well, initially we want to maybe land on some buildings, but not on the ones that you're going to populate with thousands on. We've gone, okay, we can build something like that. So we built them something that could give them thousands and thousands of buildings. And then they just went, well, this is really cool, but now we want to be able to fly way back from the planet. We want to be able to see the whole planet, and we want to be able to see, like thousands upon thousands of buildings. So we started building technology that could handle reducing the amount of buildings as you faded back from the planet, but still being able to handle the thousands of buildings.
The technology for PS2 is really great. We've got a really brutal, fast, highly evolved engine, and so the visuals are really tip-top in the game. And we've had a really good budget to work with the title as well, and it's given us a chance to make something which is top-end. We've done that before with racing games, but not with this kind of action game. We've tons of polygons, really smooth frame rate, tons of enemies to battle and fight against.
We're definitely pushing the PlayStation 2 to its limits. You can see this on the screen when you're playing the game, the number of creatures you're playing against, the artificial intelligence they're displaying, the physics as they get thrown around the world. Every bit of the world you can see is accessible, you can reach it, every tree exists in the game. We've had over 6,300 builds of the game so far. Our testing system runs every single day. We build a new build for the QA department, which we then supply to our own QA here in Australia, then also to America and Europe. It's definitely the most tested thing we've ever done. Nothing has even come close to this.
The AI is great in the game. You can really play around with the enemies in these worlds.
The enemies are highly intelligent in the game. If you replay a certain level, I guess they will act differently every time. They're very organic in the way they're programmed. So the level designers, I mean, they virtually just place the creatures into the world in different places. None of it's scripted. They actually just say, look, put these guys here in this part of the world, and then the AI takes over. With this game, we had to make car physics that would work on any environment. The Autobots can transform from a robot into a car on an icy tundra, or you might be within an Amazon forest, and we have to be able to drive on those things. Ragdoll physics, it's a more powerful way of simulating reactions with bodies. So as opposed to canned animation, in the past people would just hand animate reactions, say a weapon reaction with a body. Now they're using physical forces to simulate the reaction of that weapon on the body. So, you know, a punch in the head really looks like a punch in the head, or a punch in the leg really looks like a punch in the leg. You don't get the same reaction every time.
The best thing about the game has to be really the synergy of gameplay, visuals and audio. The audio is great because of the interactive music and just the sheer number of sound effects and 3D sounds that we've got going off in the game.
One of the problems we've had with video games in the past is to make the music work with the action on screen. In other words, you can't write it linear like a film because you don't know what's going to happen. It's all under the player's finger. So what we've done for this game is we really thought a lot about it and developed interactive music, which involves creating different layers of music that we can cross-fade to depending on what the action is on the screen. So when you're exploring, it'll be just very atmospheric. If there's an enemy around the corner, the music will change intensity just slightly. Once we get into a battle, the music will go up again, and into a really intense battle, up again. So we've basically got 4 layers of music that can continually change depending on what the player's doing and what the action is on the screen. Well, the advantage of having in-house music, and this is something we feel very strongly about, is that rather than just have a game, it goes out to a composer, he just writes the music, you slap it on. We have the added advantage of being able to develop the music with the game. So as levels are being developed, the composer's looking at them, getting a feel for them, writing stuff, putting it into the game. So we're able to work really closely with both the director, the artists, the whole team to develop the music as a part of the game rather than an added on extra.
This game was completely different because of the interactive music that we had. You're actually writing different layers of music that all loop and all kind of have to work with each other and are all controlled by the player. So I really had to work with the development team to try. This was a lot of trial and error because we'd never done it before. Putting music into it, pulling it back out, trying something else. Lots of that.
As far as the voices for Transformers go, we cast about 100 actors and we cast some people here, threw it all into a pile, let the director hear it all, and he chose who he wanted for each of the parts. We ended up going with Gary Chalk, who's the Optimus Prime from the Armada series.
Autobots, we must stop Megatron. Roll out!
And David Kay, who's Megatron from the Armada series.
It's over, Prime.
Both those guys were extremely good and knew the characters very well. We went to Vancouver in Canada, where they both reside, to record them, and we gave them direction as to how we wanted them to be. We didn't want it cartoony. We wanted it to fit with our game, but still have the recognition of the characters. So basically, we've got a totally international cast for Transformers.
Come, Autobot. Let's finish it.
A lot of people who see the game for the first time are very, very surprised by what a Transformers game has become. There have been other Transformers games in the past which have, I think, not been so well received, but we want to make something which can really stand on its own as a high-quality game. This game will appeal to everybody. If you're a casual gamer, there are modes in the game, difficulty levels in the game where it's tuned for you and hopefully won't be too scary and will help you get into it. If you're a hardcore gamer, there are modes there, difficulty levels, where everything takes on a new level of intensity and it becomes pretty hardcore as well. So there really is a hope that it's going to appeal to really anybody and everybody. The thing I'm most proud of with Transformers is the fusion of some of the bigger Western developed games we've seen recently with values found in a lot of Japanese games. But the challenge has been, as a game, to make it appeal to the PS2 gamer. And I think that I'm really proud of how we've managed to achieve that.